CBS News color coverage of Man on the Moon. Sponsored by Kellogg's. Kellogg's puts more in your morning. Here from CBS News Apollo headquarters at Kennedy Space Center, correspondent Walter Cronkite.
Good morning. It's T-minus 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 53 seconds, and counting in just an hour and a half.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Good morning. Man is about to launch himself on a trip to the moon from this Florida launch complex.
We've had shutdown. Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main beam unrunnable. Roger, main beam unrunnable.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there's no hope for their recovery. But they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice.
Houston, we have a problem. Famous words from famous men from a famous event where we went to the moon. The problem, Houston, is we never went.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. Mr. Houston, say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main beam unrunnable.
I'm sorry, Dave.
Roger, main beam unrunnable.
I can't do that.
If you were to open the Bible and read with no external assistance, but simply observation and the Scriptures, you would walk away with a very different concept of the universe and cosmology than what we now have. And make no mistake, should the reality in which we live ever be torn apart, and it will at the rapture, the world will not be able to cope with the consequences. Reading your Bible, you would see things differently. And what you would see would match up to what you feel and experience and what your senses tell you are true. In fact, your Bible and the description it gives of the cosmos would not in any way present theories of relativity, but rather be supported by all the empirical research and true science that has been done. Reading your Bible at face value, you would immediately have a sense that there was something before the time now. That there was another world where other beings reigned and ruled until cast down from their treasonous assault against God. You would see that there was a time when there was a destruction and something catastrophic that happened universally. You would read such words as firmament and recognize that there is something different about the heavens. A closed system, so to say, would be how you would read. Not an endless vastness of space created by a big bang, but a dome, a firmament created by God. You would see that the earth is indeed the center of known reality, and that the stars, moon, and sun all circulate around the earth. You would read that there are two lights, one called the sun and the other, the lesser, called the moon, but that they are in fact individually generated light sources. You would read throughout the Bible nothing of a spinning globe hurling through time and space without any reason or rhyme. What you would read is about an earth with foundations, pillars, seas beneath, and the abyss. Inner worlds where transdimensional beings exist. You would read of an earth with corners, with ends, and habitable and inhabitable parts. Seas that are limited by the hand of God. And a face of the earth with a circular barrier. Of course, you would read that there is a limit placed upon man, and that the second and third heavens are clearly off limits to him. Everything you read would substantially be different than what you were told today. Thankfully, however, science has delivered us from such silly notions of an antiquated and silly book, or so we are told. This, of course, is the same science that tells us we are derived from apes. It also tells us that we are spinning through space. But if one just reads the Bible and took it at face value, along with empirical scientific evidence, it would be hard not to think that there is a cosmic cover-up. There is to be had big business if there is indeed a space cover-up. In fact, there is also big religion to be had, and maybe bigger than we could ever possibly realize. It seems now on the news we're seeing that the super rich are even getting in on the party as they begin to take turns piercing the lower Earth atmosphere. And before long, we're told that common spaceflight will be popular and readily available. We have the Space Force, and of course we also have all the empty promises of going to Mars. And yet, with all of the science and all of technology and all of our power, there seems to be one thing that eludes us: a glorious return to the moon. I'm not talking about CGI pictures being radioed back. I'm talking about going to the moon, landing on it, building on it, taking selfies on it. Why have we not gone back to the moon? The truth is, you hold in your pocket more technology than was used to get us there in the first place. If you have a cell phone, you have 10,000 times more computer power and technology than they had the first time they went to the moon. And yet, it seems we're incapable of going back, and no one has any plans anytime soon to return. Why have we not gone back? Maybe the real question to be asked is if we ever went there in the first place. Well, according to history, we did beat the Russians there in a mad dash to get to the moon to show our supremacy. But the Russians, even now some 60 years later, are still not buying it. In an article on RT.com, it states, quote, "In the recent survey titled Science and Society, Authority and Trust, experts of the Russian state-run Public Opinion Research Center wrote that 57% of Russians currently think that the U.S. claims of a successfully manned moon mission are lies, and that the documented proof of these missions was forged. In fact, only 24% of respondents said that they believed that the manned moon missions were real. Researchers also specified that 65% of those who think that the U.S. authorities are lying about the moon landing have a secondary education." In other words, what the article is stating is that these are not toothless vagabonds somewhere in Siberia, but they are highly educated people who look at the facts and data and say, "I wonder." NASA moon missions have been doubted for a long time. The article states 59% of the poll participants share the opinion that, quote, "scientists conceal the truth from common people," unquote. And anyone who has lived through 2020 and 2021 with our beloved Dr. Fauci knows that that is an accurate statement.
There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better. Wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection. But it's not providing the perfect protection. But it's not providing the perfect protection.
Even among Russians with higher education, the proportion was extremely high, at 45%. When facing the question if the scientists possessed some objective knowledge about the reality, the Russian public again split right down the middle. 42% agreed with this and said that it was true, while 41% said that in their opinion, the scientists who claimed this weren't telling the truth. As far as space aliens are concerned, and of course you can't go to the soul trap without coming to that subject, 45% of the poll participants in Russia said that they believed in the existence of extraterrestrial civilization, and 42% think that aliens either don't exist or for some reason prefer not to visit the Earth and contact humans. It may be that they're concerned about the Delta variant.
Come on, man.
I added that last part in. 18% of respondents said that in their opinion the authorities were hiding proof of alien visits from the general public. Well, as the article states, it seems like the Russians have a lot of doubts, and we can understand that. We can understand the Russians' unwillingness to believe us because, after all, we beat them there, and they're just sore losers. But what if there are others? What if there are others who question the mainstream idea and myth? Josh Fox writes an interesting little article that really begs one to think. He states that the theory that the moon landings were hoaxed by the U.S. government to assert their victory in the space race over Russia is something which has grown in popularity over time. Recent polls indicate that approximately 20% of Americans believe that the U.S. has never landed on the moon. After the Apollo missions ended in the 70s, he asks, why haven't we ever been back? Only during the term of Richard Nixon did humanity ever land on the moon, and after Watergate, most people wouldn't put it past Tricky Dick,
Well, I'm not a crook.
to fake them out and to put America in good standing once again in the Cold War. In this list, Josh writes, I have presented some of the proposed evidence to suggest that the moon landings were hoaxes. I have tried to include NASA's explanation to each entry to provide an objective perspective. Now, we're all about objectivity here at the Soul Trap. And so he lists 10 particular concerns that conspiracy theorists have that they say prove that we did not land on the moon. The first is the waving flag. The waving flag, conspiracy theorists have pointed out that when the first moon landing was shown live on television, viewers could clearly see the American flag waving and fluttering as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin planted it. Photos of the landing also seem to show rippling in a breeze, such as the image above, which clearly shows a fold in the flag. Well, the obvious problem here, the article states, is that there's no air in the moon's atmosphere, and therefore no wind to cause the flag to blow. The fact of the matter is that no matter how well staged, and no matter how precise the sound and video studio would have been, there would be no way to create that in a vacuum. And so that was one of the flaws in their perpetrated conspiracy. Now, countless explanations have been put forward, Josh writes in his article, to disprove this phenomenon as anything unusual. NASA itself claimed that the flag was stored in a thin tube and the ripple effect was caused by it being unfurled before being planted. Other explanations involve the ripples caused by the reaction force of the astronauts touching the aluminum pole, which is shown to shake in the video footage. Another issue is that there is a lack of a blast crater. The claim goes as follows. Had NASA really landed on the moon, there would be a blast crater underneath the lunar module to mark its landing. Now, the fact of the matter is, when you look at the pictures, it's not that there is a little crater. There is zero disturbance of the ground. There is no blast crater whatsoever. On any video footage or any photograph of the landings, no crater is visible, almost as though the module was simply placed there, the article states. The surface of the moon is covered in fine lunar dust, and even this dust doesn't seem to have been displaced in photographic evidence. Much like the waving flag theory, however, the lack of an impact crater has a slew of potential explanations, or so NASA claims. NASA maintains that the module required significantly less thrust in the low gravity condition than it would have done on Earth. They also claim that the surface of the moon itself is solid rock. So, being solid rock, a blast crater probably wouldn't be feasible anyway. Except, if I remember just a moment ago, they said that they were able to plant the flag in the ground. I'm not sure how they can plant an aluminum pole in solid rock. But of course, I'm probably not educated enough to understand those complicated contradictions. In the same way, it goes on to say that an airplane doesn't leave a crater when it touches down on a concrete airstrip. That's why they say there was no crater. Well, another issue is multiple light sources. On the moon, there is only one strong light source, and that is, you guessed it, the sun. So it's fair to suggest that all shadows should run parallel to one light source. Anyone with a basic idea and understanding of drawing and light and art, video and camera would understand that. Except videos and photographs clearly show that the shadows fall in different directions. Conspiracy theorists suggest that this must mean multiple light sources are present. Now, I want to stress here for just a moment, when we say conspiracy theorists suggest, they're not coming up with something. Light and light sources and shading and shadowing, those are all physics. Those are all photography. These are all basic things that should be there. So it's not as if they're trying to reach down to the bottom of the barrel. These are things that should be clearly seen and understood. What that does, the article goes on to state, is suggest that the landing photos were taken on a film set. Now, NASA has attempted to blame uneven landscape on the strange shadows, with subtle bumps and hills on the moon's surface causing the discrepancies. This explanation has been tossed out the window by some theorists. How could hills cause such a large angular difference? In the image above that you're seeing, the lunar module's shadow clearly contradicts that of the rocks in the foreground at an almost 45-degree angle. Then there is another issue, and that is the Van Allen radiation belt. In order to reach the moon, astronauts had to pass through what is known as the Van Allen radiation belt. The belt is held in place by Earth's magnetic field and stays perpetually in the same place. The Apollo missions to the moon marked the first ever attempt to transport living humans through the belt. Conspiracy theorists contend that the sheer levels of radiation would have cooked the astronauts en route to the moon, despite the layers of aluminum coating the interior and the exterior of the spaceship. Now, I want to pause here for just a moment. I've had the privilege of being to the Smithsonian twice and seeing the lunar modules and seeing the technology, the ships, the material that we use to go to the moon. And my dear friend, if you don't believe that it was faked, I urge you to go to the Smithsonian. It is some of the most toy-like designs that you could ever imagine. It is an amazing thing to think that we supposedly went to the moon and supposedly made it through the Van Allen radiation belt with the material and the technology that we had. But that's what we're told. This particular theory of conspiracy says, how in the world were they able to get through that? NASA has countered this argument by emphasizing the short amount of time it took the astronauts to traverse the belt, meaning they received only very small doses of radiation. Now, I want to say this. Before we go on, I want you to remember this particular conspiracy theory here, this particular point, the Van Allen radiation belt, because it's going to crop up again in a major way. Then there is also the unexplained object. After photographs of the moon landing were released, theorists were quick to notice a mysterious object in the reflection of the astronaut's helmet. From the reflection of the astronaut's helmet in the Apollo 12 mission, there is something that cannot be explained in the reflection. The object appears to be hanging from a rope or a wire and has no reason to be there at all, leading some to suggest it is, in fact, an overhead spotlight typically found in film studios. The resemblance is questionable. Given the poor quality of the photograph, it's hard to make it out, but the mystery remains as to why something is being suspended in midair, or rather, lack of air. The article states the lunar module in other photos appears to have no extension from it that matches the photo, so the object still remains totally unexplained. And then again, there is the slow motion walking and hidden cables. In order to support claims that the moon landings were shot in a studio, conspiracy theorists had to account for the apparent low gravity conditions, which must have been mimicked by NASA. It has been suggested that if you take the moon landing footage and increase the speed of the film times 2.5, the astronauts appear to be moving in Earth's gravity. Well, as for the astronauts' impressive jump height, which could be impossible to perform in Earth's gravity, hidden cables and wires have been suggested as giving the astronauts some extra height. In some screenshots, outlines of alleged hidden cables can be seen. And that is not just on the Apollo missions. There are pictures and shots from people on the space station and in the actual shuttle where it appears to be that they are hooked to a harness. What's happening? Is it a facade? Is it a fake? Or are we fooling ourselves? Of course, another thing that the theorists point out is the lack of stars. In fact, one of the most compelling arguments some believe for the moon landing hoax is the total lack of stars in any of the photographic video of evidence. Not a little, Not most, zero. Zero stars. There are no clouds on the moon, so stars are perpetually visible and significantly brighter than what we would see through the filter of the Earth's atmosphere. The argument here is that NASA would have found it impossible to map out the exact location of all stars for the hoax without being in trouble, and therefore left them out, intentionally falling back on an excuse that the quality of photographs washes them out, an excuse they did actually give. The problem is that some photographs are high quality. However, there is still no stars shown, no matter how quality the photo actually is. It is certainly eerie considering the fact that you and I can take pictures of stars from Earth in much lower quality and still see them. Then there is also what's called the sea rock. One of the most famous photos from the moon landing shows a rock in the foreground with what appears to be the letter C engraved into it. The letter appears to be almost perfectly symmetrical, meaning it is unlikely to be a natural occurrence. It has been suggested by some that the rock is simply a prop, with the letter C used as a marker by an alleged film crew who mistakenly forgot to remove it. A set designer could have turned the rock the wrong way, accidentally exposing the marking to the camera. NASA has given conflicting reports about it. Sometimes they have said it was simply a photographic error, while at other cases they have said it was a practical joke. And even on some hands saying that it has simply been a stray hair which got tangled up somewhere in the developing process. There is also the issue of the layered crosshairs. The cameras used by astronauts during the moon landings had a multitude of crosshairs to aid with scaling and direction. These are imprinted over the top of all photographs. Some of the images, however, clearly show the crosshairs behind objects in the scene, implying that photographs may have been edited or doctored after being taken. The photograph shown above is not an isolated occurrence. Many objects are shown to be in front of the crosshairs, including our infamous American flag in one picture, and then there is the lunar rover in another. Conspiracy theorists have suggested NASA printed the man-made objects over a legitimate photograph of the moon to hoax the landing. The duplicate backdrops are also another big issue, and I personally find this to be one of the most fascinating and convincing parts of the case. The fact of the matter is, there are duplicate photographs. 2 photographs from Apollo 15 mission shown above clearly have identical backdrops, despite being officially listed by NASA as having been taken miles apart. By the way, you might want to take a look at some of the Mars photographs as they come back. You might find the same thing if you do a little bit of research. One photo even shows the lunar module. When all photographs were taken, the module had already landed. So how can it possibly be there for one photo and disappear in another? Well, if you're a hardcore conspiracy theorist, it may seem viable that NASA simply used the same backdrop when filming different scenes of their moon landing videos. NASA has suggested that since the moon is much smaller than Earth, horizons can appear significantly closer to the human eye. Despite this, the article states, to say that the 2 hills visible in the photographs are miles apart is incontrovertibly false. The fact is that when you really start looking at things, it is very, very hard not to come up with the idea that we have a governmental generated myth of American greatness that may have never really actually happened. And let's return now to the Van Allen belt. If we went through it with minimal technology that we had, why is it such a big deal now? Note in this next video clip that one of the things that they're trying to figure out and discover is how to safely navigate the belt. Well, if we had done it once before, why not brush out the technology, brush out the information, repackage it, and reuse it? It's as if they slipped up in their own propaganda.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation.
But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation.
Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. For this flight, it's time to head home.
Now, the real question is, if you're going to perpetrate such a hoax, if you're going to put on a show for the entire world to see, every great show needs a director. Enter the Stanley Kubrick theory. In the article, Josh writes, this loose extension of the popular conspiracy theory states that acclaimed film director Stanley Kubrick was approached by the U.S. government to hoax the first 3 moon landings. There are 2 main branches of this somewhat implausible theory, Josh writes. One group of believers maintain that Kubrick was approached after he released 2001, A Space Odyssey, which was released in 1968, 1 year before the first moon landing. After NASA came to appreciate the stunning realism of the film's outer space scenes at that time, they approached him. Now, I personally don't believe that's the way that it worked. I think a shot of this magnitude would require far more than 1 year of planning. This had to have been in the works for some time. The article goes on to state that there is another group that contends that Kubrick was groomed by the government to film the moon landing long before this, and that 2001, A Space Odyssey was a dry run, a staged practice run for him. So, the question is, what evidence might support such claims? Well, apparently, if you watch The Shining, another Kubrick picture,
here's Johnny,
you can pick up on some of the alleged messages hidden by Kubrick to subtly and not so subtly inform the world of his part in the conspiracy. The most obvious is the child's Apollo 11 shirt, worn in only one scene. Another supposed gem is the line written on Jack Nicholson's character's typewriter. Remember the phrase, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, in which the word all can be interpreted as A11 or Apollo 11. If you're not yet convinced, Kubrick made the mysterious hotel room in the film number 237. Guess how many miles it is from here to the moon? It is 238,000 miles. So divided that by 1,000 and minus 1, and you've got an airtight theory, or so some believe. And then there is also the shot of the boy playing and the outline of the rocket pad. Some believe Stanley was actually later killed due to his unwillingness to be quiet and his propensity to try to push the boundaries of letting you and me, through the lens of the movie screen, see beyond the veil. Some believe Stanley was killed in part due to a movie he filmed called Eyes Wide Shut that clearly intimated that there was a child sexual and sacrifice ring in the upper levels of power. But you don't have to take my word for it. Why not let Stanley himself tell you what he thinks?
I was going to say, like, why not CNN or... But who cares? What Truth Right is about a future movie or something coming out or...
No.
Okay.
It's not about any movie. It's not about the movies I've made in the past. It's a confession of sorts.
Okay. I mean, about you cheated on your wife, you plagiarized.
I would never do that, no.
Plagiarized something.
It's about a movie I made that nobody is aware of, even though they've seen it.
Okay.
Is that intriguing? Do I have you intrigued?
Well, I mean, see if I understand what you said. It's about a movie you made, no one knows you made. Is that what you said?
That's right. It's a production.
Like, some of you put, like, you didn't put your name on, like, at the end you put, like, a fake name?
Oh, no, I I made it.
Like Alan Smithy, like that.
That's right. Thing? No, I didn't. There was no name put on it.
Why? Why would there be no credits? What do you mean?
Because there are some things that you just can't put your name on.
Okay. But
I perpetrated a huge fraud, which I am now about to detail.
Okay.
Involving the United States government and NASA.
All right.
And I'm sure you've heard the rumors.
The moon landing hoax?
That's right. That the moon landing was fake. The moon landings all were fake. And I was the person who filmed it.
You're serious? Okay.
I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
Because I only have this certain amount of time with you, and I'll talk about whatever you want. You know, this isn't some type of joke or film within a film thing.
Not a joke. Nope.
Okay.
The conspiracy theorists were right on this occasion.
Why?
I don't know about Paul McCartney's death, but they were right about.
Okay. Why in God's name would... I don't know what to ask you first. Why the hell, if you're telling the truth, why would you do it? Why are you telling me? I mean, what the...
Don't you think it's important for people to know the truth?
Yeah, yes, certainly.
They had a massive fraud, an unparalleled fraud perpetrated against them. They should know.
Okay.
I mean, they're already suspicious of the government. They may as well have their suspicions confirmed.
Okay.
And justified.
And this, why now? I mean, we're almost at the 30-year anniversary. What took so long? Why, if this is true, why?
I won't go into that. It has to do with personal...
Okay.
Evolution and influences.
And, well,
I'll go into that.
Is that why you look a little haggard right now? Because you look a little worn. No offense.
Well, also, yeah, because I haven't been taking care of myself too well. I've been drinking a lot, but...
Is that because of the stress of this?
Of course. Stress, guilt, just conflict of all kinds.
Wow. I mean... So you feel bad about this, clearly. I mean, this is not...
I do feel bad about it. I also feel proud of it. It's a terrible conflict.
Because you've pulled off one of the greatest hoaxes ever because of your...
And because I made a film, if you want to call it a film, which I consider to be my masterpiece.
And you can't take credit or even talk about it as a...
Hereby,
you are now.
I'm hereby taking credit.
Right, but you can't actually go out. You're doing... When people see this, you'll be dead.
Until 10 years.
Right, or 15, yeah.
After my death.
So you can't talk to Roger Ebert about it, you know. Does that frustrate you?
I have to pay the consequences for the decision that I made many years ago to go along with this.
Like a deal with the devil.
It's Faustian, to be sure.
And is that why you got such power in Hollywood? I mean, that would explain that.
Why I have the freedom I have, that was part of it, yes.
So they said, do this moon thing and we'll give you...
When I made Spartacus, I didn't have this kind of freedom.
Right.
But I have it now.
So you tell me, is he telling the truth, or is he an old man looking for one last grasp at fame? It is interesting to note that there is a very famous movie, again, about the government creating reality called Wag the Dog. The producer who faked in this movie the whole war was eventually killed. He was handpicked and chosen to create a fake war and a fake propaganda so that a president could be elected and politics could go on. In the end, this producer, this director, desperately wanted the credit, and he was unwilling to be quiet. And so he was ushered off in a black limousine, never to be seen again. Who was this director that fooled the entire world? In the movie, Wag the Dog, his name was Stanley. So what are we to think? The foundation of our lives is built around the concept of the universe. But what if our concept has been blurred? What if we have been lied to about our concept? What if in this era, this post-industrial, this post-Renaissance era, what if in this era the great lie began not with there is no God, but with the very nature of the universe? I know that there are a lot of holes and a lot of speculations and confusing points, but one thing is certain. The heavens are not what you think, and the inner earth is different than we are led to believe. The story of the moon and our moon landing. The question is, have we ever been to the moon? And the answer is probably